Hello there, beautiful internet and you super creatures of the beyond. So, I have been painting lately and I want to share a bit of my creativity process and how I do it, and maybe go over some of the things that I do good, some of the things that I need to improve, and some of my techniques. So, ta-da! And this was obviously painted after a reference that I was given, but it is what it is, and what it is basically a shape in which I painted many other shapes. And yeah, sure, the hair doesn't look too fantastic, but I did the best that I could. Then again, a gun as a reference, I had to paint that manually. Is it this one? No, that's the chain. This one. So again, many little things that I did with the gun. As you can see, plenty of little retouches. And you might think, oh, how did you achieve this? Well, to be honest, it's quite easy. Actually, I want to show you guys what I used. I'm gonna just leave him on the side here. And I used only these colors. Actually, I didn't even use all of them. I used these three in particular, these two, and this one. And this creates this photographic shading. Obviously, the more you zoom in, the more you can see that it's not super great. Some of the hair could have been improved, especially here, especially on the edge. The chest is, I left it intentionally blank for now. I might improve a little bit more. The hand was quite difficult. Hands in general are extremely difficult to do. This finger might have been able to be pushed a little bit more. And then you have the continuation of the index where it goes in front of the trigger. Not too shabby, but let's see. Pam, 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 hand. If I disable the gun, you can see if I disable the hand. Well, I didn't put the handle, obviously. But you get what I mean. And the chain, well, the chain looks funky when you zoom in, but you zoom out, it looks quite alright. A bit of shading here and there. So how do we achieve this? Well, first of all, we clearly need to use, well, let me make sure that I'm creating a new layer. And I only play with this. Generally just with this. The rest are just funky stuff that I sometimes use, but very rarely. But this. So let's say we create a shape. We're gonna take our brush and we're gonna take a sample. Let's say we're gonna make it on this type of a surface. Then we need to take and create the base template. So for that, I'm just gonna take a full feathered build up um, brush. Gonna make it a bit bigger, maybe not that big. And usually I'm just gonna use the stabilizer, just create a shape. Something like so. Oops. Just something that resembles something. Then I disable the stabilizer and I just fill it in. And let's say this is gonna be our main shape. Then if I want to add shadow, all I have to do is just create, oops, whoa, what did I do? I'm just gonna add a new layer and I'm gonna mask it directly on the shape without creating a separate mask, although you can. I'll show you a situation where I had to use mask. And now let's say I'm going in and for example, I want to create a specific shadow here. So I'm gonna take my brush. Right now it's on the foreground. I'm gonna change it to the background, select this. I press X to change in between. And now it's all a matter of what brush I want to use from here. Lately I like how to dense these brushes are. They don't leave so many unwanted patterns, but these ones are also viable in the sense that you cannot, well, there are texture brushes obviously, but if you want to create your own texture, then you would have to let the brush be a little bit more loose. If you don't want so many textures, then or you want it to be a little bit more dense, then you go with the build-up brush. The difference between this and this, so for example, if I take this one, it's the spacing. If I go to this one, oh come on, the spacing is set at 25%. So if I would take this, let's say, well, not this one, actually, I'm gonna build up the color, okay? So I'm taking opacity 40%, flow 40%, hardness 80, but depends. If I want to make it as, depends on the harshness of the shadow. If it's a harsh shadow, it's not gonna be so blurry. But if I want to make it more blurry, then I play around here and I go around 30%, for example. So let's make it a bit blurry. And I'm just gonna come right around here. Well, maybe make the brush a bit bigger. And then slowly build up this shadow, like so. Now this is a very diffuse shadow. As I said, if you want it less blurry, we're gonna go with an 80 and then we can already see the difference. Now, obviously, this is very harsh here, but what I do is I only work with the brush, the eraser tool, and the smudge tool. That's all I work with. Now, the smudge tool in any software depends on the size, because if I use this size, it's gonna affect a larger area and it's gonna smudge things harder. Then you have the flow, which also, or the strength, depending on which one you want to play with. Usually 50% strength is quite powerful, but if we leave it a little bit lower, uh, you can also play with the opacity, well, the flow basically. So if I'm gonna take with this or this, let's keep it at 40. So let's do something like so, and I'm keeping 40%. So now if I do something like this, again, I'm not mixing the colors. This is a separate layer. But if I have problems with this still being too harsh, then I go to my eraser tool here and I'll choose something like, let's say, still 40%. Then I slowly, well, 40 maybe is too strong. Let's go with the other one with 20. I slowly just remove a little bit of it, go back to my smudge tool and just do this. Well, it's still a little bit too big. But as you can see, we have already blended in quite a beautiful shadow. And we can already see we are creating the texture. in this way. Obviously, you can manually. I like to just make sort of like these circles, because if you, well, depends how much color you're also intaking, obviously. And if it's too strong, then I just lower the flow and do it a little bit more like this. And this already creates this, well, let's call it blurriness. So now it's all a matter of how you use your tool. For example, if I want to create this shadow sort of like this, let's say it has a circular path, it's a 3D object, we want to give it the impression of a 3D object, we're just gonna sort of push the colors like this. Of course, you can play around. This takes a lot of trial and error, mostly, but it's also getting that effect that you're seeking for. If you want very sharp edges, you're gonna just play around in an area until you get those sharp edges. If you want smooth edges, then you're gonna take your time to smooth them out and blur them and whatever. Of course, we can bring a little bit more of a darkness in this side, but keep in mind that everything reflects. So even if light is coming from this side, it should also be reflected on the surface from this side. So then we're just going to, what the hell am I doing? Move this a little bit. Then I'm gonna do another layer on top of this, and I'm gonna select, well, let's say it's, wait, first I need to move to brush. Then I need to switch the foreground, and I'm gonna make it, well, let's make the brush a bit smaller. Select this lighter tone, and I'm gonna select a way less intense opacity and flow. This is 20% with 80 and 80. Now here it depends. Again, if you want to make it harsh, you're gonna go with 80, but I rather go with a 30 because this is kind of a diffuse light. So you can kind of go something like so. Slowly, don't push it too much. Obviously the bottom part is gonna have more light than the top one. And you're just building up, building up, building up. Bam, bam, bam. Come with a few passes, build it up, then you can just smooth it out a little bit here. And now, maybe this is too much. I'm gonna switch back to my smudge tool. I'm gonna smother it a little. Push the color a bit outside. Or you can bring it back in, because this is technically a mask. And if it's too strong here, like it is here, I'm gonna take the eraser. I'm on 20%. Sometimes I need to even go to 10%, but I just go like with one pass like so. Maybe I'm gonna push this to 0, so the effects are not so striking. And then I'm just giving a few passes of the eraser tool, you know, and slowly, slowly shape it into how I like it. Again, I think it's losing too much. I'm bringing the smudge tool, and then the eraser again, and we're just playing with this slowly. You don't need to push too much out of it. Sometimes just the smudge tool is enough to kind of fix everything you want. So it's a very, very diffuse light on this side. But obviously we cannot live only with diffuse lights. And we have to bring in some harsher highlights. So we do another tone here, layer there. I'm gonna switch to my brush. I'm gonna take the very white one. I'm gonna keep it on 20, but probably I'm gonna lower it a bit. So again, 30, but maybe on this one I can push it to 80. Let's try it a bit more harsher, a bit smaller, and then I'm just gonna do something like this and build it up. Now, obviously it is very harsh, so I'm just gonna play a little bit with how I infuse it. And I'm gonna take the smudge tool and again, bam, 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 bam. Gonna push it a little bit. I don't want too much on this side. And again, it's a bit too strong. So I'm gonna take the eraser, make it a bit bigger, go like so. Maybe remove some from the bottom because the bottom is going to be the darkest side. Try to push a little bit in this side. If I lose too much, then I just repaint it. And then again, with the with the smudge tool, I just come and easily add it in. Slowly, nothing too strong, you know. And then we want to make something more global. So we're gonna take the brush and we want this lower side to be in the shadow. So I'm gonna take this. Well, actually I just need to switch and my brush. And I'm gonna go 40%. And I'm gonna do something. Oh, actually, this one is gonna. Oops, I jumped too fast. We'll get to that in a moment. 0%, let's say, because this is gonna be a global shadow. And we're just shadowing things down here. Sometimes you just have to push that color a bit stronger. Nothing too crazy. Sometimes you can even come and add a bit more tone here to the middle if you think it's not enough. Just smudge it. Of course, you can just erase part of what you don't like. And then obviously, if you want to add a shadow underneath, all you have to do is create a new layer underneath this layer. Come with your brush. And just slowly. Oh, the shadow has to encompass a little bit of the radius because it's a three-dimensional object. So slowly push your shadow. So the shadow becomes darker underneath, as dark as possible, but create a darkness that makes sense, you know? And then it slowly gets lost as you go like this. Obviously, it depends on how many light sources you have, because if you have multiple light sources, then you might have multiple shadows that will manifest. Of course, you also have to detect the direction from which the shadow comes. And everything, every time you think you've made a mistake, bring in the eraser and just slowly chip at it, slowly, 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 and then we want to add more here, like so, and then we just play with the smoothing tool. Obviously, this is an accentuated because the shadow should be a little bit stronger, like so. Yeah. Try to lose some of the effects that you do not like. And push the color slowly in the direction you like. Reduce some of this. Then we remove some of this. And we play. That should look relatively close enough to something believable. You know, simple, simple, simple elements. And as you can see, obviously this shadow is not hard, but if we want, we can also make it hard towards the objects, because here it becomes a bit more diffuse. But here it should be a bit more harsher. And then something like so. Of course, you can still diffuse a bit of it. Now I'm taking too much color into my smudge tool, but it's alright. We're gonna use the eraser. And we can just maybe reduce. Well, it is reduced enough. And as you can see, it's starting to look better. Of course, it has to be improved. Depends how you want to push your shadow. Do you want it more maximized and clear edge like this? You can also push some of the color towards the boundaries and so many, many, many other things. Shadows can be complex or simplistic, because you don't have to build everything up. Sometimes you can just leave it to interpretation. Like for example, if we look here, we see there are many shapes and little elements, and on their own they would look weird. But when you assemble them correctly together, they start making a very global, interesting picture. Obviously, it's not perfect. I'm still learning, as I said. But something along the lines of this. So that's how you build. Just free tools, nothing else. Sometimes I might use the paint bucket tool if I want to fill in an outline, let's say, to create a shape. But other than that, nothing. I don't even bother with gradients or stuff like that. And I think the results are far more realistic this way. Um, Clearly, if you want to create a very specific shape, so for example, here I want to uh, create something, let's say there is a dimple or something like that. I can slowly play it with this like this. Oh my god, somebody's pinging me, I don't know why. And then slowly remove part of this. Ah, a moment, guys, excuse me. Forgot my Discord. Uh, so we do this. We push the color more. And we already see that we are getting something out of it. Obviously, it takes multiple passes until you get it right. But the moment you move away, you start to see that element. Obviously, maybe I'll push it a little bit higher and remove a little bit of the darkness. And maybe bring in here. You know, playing around, see what works, what doesn't, until you get it to something that it feels right. Okay, so I'm gonna save this. And then we move. And this hand, this hand gave me a lot of issues. But I did manage to make it look amazing to some extent. So yeah, I have played with various techniques to create this texture, and most of the time is just pushing it with the smudge tool. Sometimes it is just using the eraser to just make it a bit more sharper, the tone. As you can see, there are some interesting things in design. You always, I'm gonna just draw something on top of this. Um, if you look in design, you'll always have, you will never have things like this. You can, but it doesn't look very good. But what you have are sort of like confident straight lines that go like this and like this and like this, very loose lines, you see. So as you can see, I have already created this shape just by doing um, simple lines. For example, this one is just like, well, not that accentuated, something like this. And then you have a bit over here, and then you have one over here, well, a little bit more arched. Getting that arch is sometimes annoying. You see, here you have like something like this. It's never like this. It's do either things like lines and curves, S's, very long S's, uh, C's like this, and you can combine it like this and like this, or you can have it something simple, this is like a free or something, very simple things. Um, Again, here is one outline, but maybe this one, when I created it, I can't remember right now. I've created it as an entire thing, and then I've came with a shadow and made something like this, and then added something like this, and a little bit inside here. Simple objects. Try not to wiggle too much. Make long strokes and general shapes. Um, The nose is not built individually and is painted directly on this. I just painted a very sharp, dark shadow and then left this triangular shape here. And then I've built things on top of it to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. And obviously for this I just added a few more lights. Obviously there is a tiny gradient and some things are very, very, very uh, I don't know, it's like 10% or 5% like this painted in the background just to give a bit of depth. And then here I just used a lot of smudging and playing around with colors. This one actually I separated when I made it. Created it separately on top of this and then added this shadow. What I am happy with is this piece of cloth that is on top. Looks really, really authentic for some reason. And here is a situation where I have used I've created this part that comes on top of the hand because the hand is in between these two pieces of layers with the cloth. And then I've created a shading that uses this this mask of this shape. So I didn't create it directly in the shape. And the reason being is that this shadow comes partially over this layer that is on top of the hand, and on the layer on the layer on the layer underneath to combine it to make it look more natural. So this is one situation where masks can come in handy. And of course, I'm still learning how to do clothes. Clothes are deceptively difficult to shade. But if you have the patience, uh, then you can create some interesting elements on them that look natural from afar. But obviously, the closer you get, you start to see those defects, let's call them. But nevertheless, I think it looks interesting. As for the palm, this one is a lot of intricate small shapes. So here is like where you have to work into detail. But even here, you see like very abrupt moves of creating the shapes. So if I'm gonna create, I want the pixel. So it's like sort of like this, 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 and you move like this. Obviously, I use the stabilizer. This, then we go like this and like this. Simple. It's not too complicated. And obviously, you're going to create something like so. Push it a bit like so, and like so. Long and accentuated curves. You see? Hop, 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 hop. Obviously, this is a little bit dramatic. But in bodies, you don't have any straight edges most of the time. Everything has some sort of curve. I can't even think of something that has straight edges unless it's something like, I don't know, a reflection on, let's say, on your fingernail. Then it would be something. Well, let me move to the white. What did I press? So if it's a reflection of the fingernail, it's gonna be something straight like this. But even then, you can just put a little dimple into it, or not use the stabilizer, obviously, to just make it a bit more natural, you see? And then here, I've just added the highlights and then diffused it with the smudge tool, slowly, 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 until it looked okay. And again, you have to understand how light falls. So it's like a cup. This part is in the shadow. Actually, I can just draw because I'm on a separate layer. So this part is in the shadow. And the light, since it's coming from these directions, it's gonna fall on this surface. And then, obviously, because it's a three-dimensional, and obviously the tips of the fingers, and since it's coming from this side, we're gonna have a part over here, well, all the way over here. And then, since everything else is in the shadow, because it's like a cup, it's gonna be like so. Hop, 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 hop. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Here I made a little mistake. I just drew too much. Let me see if I can correct this. Should be in the group, maybe this one. Yeah, this one. So here we have a few options. If I don't want to mess it up, I can just create a mask, and I can just use directly the eraser tool, which is on 0%. Maybe I should move it to 80. And actually now, let me move it to something full, like so. And I'm just gonna come slowly, like so. And hide it. Obviously, this part is a little bit on top. And I'm not sure exactly what generates it. Maybe the hand. I'm totally unsure what actually is on top of this. Something from here, maybe this one. Yeah, this one. So again, a little mask. And then slowly, maybe just make it a bit smaller, like so. And obviously you can play with some of the highlights here, because some things can sometimes have continuation in the darkness. And it's just for, well, let's just say I'm gonna take, I need to bring in my colors. Where are your colors? So I'm gonna take the brush, hop, hop. I'm gonna take something with very small opacity. And we're gonna go back to our hand over here. I'm gonna keep it to, let's leave it on 8. And let's see what happens if I do. Oh, why am I not on the, okay. Okay, now it works. So I could do something over here to kind of give it the impression that this is the part of the palm where you have those, I don't know how it's called. It's a bone. And then I can make it smaller and show the tendons a little bit, something like this. Something even like so. And now all I have to do is just blur it out with the smudge tool. Hop, 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 hop. Maybe even smaller. And obviously, since this is too strong, I'm gonna take the eraser tool. I'm gonna go on 20% opacity, and I'm gonna do it small, like so. And obviously, if it's still too strong, I'm gonna push more of this inwards, this one more like so. Well, obviously it can be done much better than this because I'm not blurring enough for some reason. Maybe I should push the opacity a little higher. Interesting. Interesting. I don't have enough opacity to smudge. So now we have something better. Obviously, you can create sort of like these patterns with the uh, with the eraser, like leaving some parts on and some parts off. But it's up to you. Sometimes this one you want to make a little bit straighter. Maybe I should push in the opacity. So going something like this. And we can also play a little bit with this. Just so that we give it a more natural feeling to it. And it's very, very, very a very thin thing. So obviously if I want to even blur it some more, I can ask the aid of Gaussian blur here and just play around and do things like this. But probably not gonna use this because I kind of like this contrast of a dark shadow. Well, hope you guys learned something interesting from this and you could apply it to your own things. As I said, you only need to master a few tools and then everything else is gonna become easy to play around with. And these tools are available in GIMP, Krita, Photoshop, and whatever other softwares you have. These are the basic tools that exist in all of them. Clearly, you can use any brush you want. You can even go with the basics, but I find the basics a bit too rough, so I tweaked them to my own liking. If you want, well, this is akin to Affinity Photo, so you have some interesting things for creating some textures if you want to. And you also have like oil paints and markers. Some of these are just things that I have installed. But you also have textures. But again, it's up to you how you want to play with these things. Personally, I just like my own brushes. uh, okay, guys, you all stay awesome, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next episode when we will paint some more and I'll learn some more. See ya! Bye 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 bye.